Most people believe that sharing your goals, your dreams, your ambitions with others will motivate them to support you. They think transparency builds trust. They think vulnerability invites loyalty. Machiavelli would call that naive, and history would agree with him. There is a reason the most powerful figures in history, the builders of empires, the architects of dynasties, the men and women who reshaped entire civilizations, kept their deepest ambitions locked away, hidden behind masks of modesty, cooperation, and sometimes even weakness. Today we are going to unpack the full Machiavellian framework around concealment of ambition. Why you must never fully reveal what you want, who you are becoming, or what you are building. And we are going to do it with the cold, surgical precision that Machiavelli himself would have demanded. Stay with me, because by the end of this, you will never look at ambition the same way again. Section 1. The world is not safe for your ambitions. Let us begin with the fundamental reality that most self-help culture refuses to acknowledge. The world is not a supportive audience waiting to celebrate your rise. It is a competitive arena filled with individuals whose interests frequently conflict with yours. This is not cynicism. This is the baseline reality that every serious student of power must internalize before doing anything else. Machiavelli opens The Prince with a deceptively simple premise. Men are driven by two primary forces, the desire to acquire and the fear of losing what they have. That is it. Strip away the philosophy, the theology, the social niceties. Underneath all of it, you find acquisition and fear of loss. Now ask yourself this. When you announce your ambitions to the world, what exactly are you doing? You are doing two things simultaneously. First, you are giving potential rivals precise intelligence about where you are going. You are handing them a map. Second, you are activating their fear of loss. You are telling them, perhaps without realizing it, that your gain may come at their expense, or that your rise will redefine the hierarchy they are currently comfortable in. And the moment you do that, you transform passive bystanders into active obstacles. Machiavelli understood this deeply. He writes that a prince who relies on the goodwill of others builds on sand. The prince who relies on his own preparations, his own strategy, his own concealed momentum, that prince builds on stone. The lesson is not that people are evil. The lesson is that people are self-interested. And self-interested people, when given advance warning that someone else is rising, will naturally, almost instinctively, begin to work against that rise. Even unconsciously. Even people who genuinely like you. This is not a theory. This is human nature operating exactly as designed. Section 2. The anatomy of envy. Before we go further, we need to spend real time on something Machiavelli treated as one of the most dangerous forces in political and social life. Envy. Not simple jealousy, not mild resentment, true envy. The deep, corrosive kind that does not just want what you have, it wants to deny you from having it. Machiavelli writes that men will sooner forgive the death of their father than the loss of their inheritance. He is making a point about how powerfully personal and material self-interest drives human behavior. But the same logic applies to status, to recognition, to position. When you reveal your ambitions to someone who has not yet achieved theirs, you are doing something cruel to them, even if unintentionally. You are holding a mirror up to their stagnation. You are making your movement visible against the backdrop of their stillness. And the most natural human response to that kind of contrast is not inspiration, it is resentment. Here is how it operates in practice. You tell a colleague you are studying to get promoted. That colleague now has a choice. They can be inspired, or they can subtly undermine your preparation, speak about your weaknesses to the decision makers, manufacture small obstacles that slow you down just enough. You tell a friend you are building a business. That friend now processes what your success would mean for them. If you succeed and they have not tried, what does that say about them? And so the sabotage begins, not with a dramatic act, but with a series of small discouragements. Are you sure the market is right? Have you thought about the risks? I heard most businesses fail in the first year. You tell a family member you are changing your life, moving towards something bigger. Now that family member has to reconcile your transformation with their own choices. If you can change, why haven't they? The easiest resolution is to keep you where you are. None of these people necessarily see themselves as enemies, but their self-interest, their fear of being left behind, their need to protect the current hierarchy, all of it positions them functionally as obstacles. Machiavelli's answer was simple. Give them nothing to work with. Reveal nothing until the position is secured, the deal is signed, the victory is already locked. Section 3, the strategic value of silence. Now let us get precise about what concealment actually means in practice. Machiavelli was not advocating for isolation. He was not telling you to become a hermit who trusts no one and shares nothing. That would be its own kind of weakness. A man who appears secretive becomes suspicious. A prince who never speaks becomes alien to his court. The Machiavellian strategy is something more sophisticated. It is not silence. It is controlled information. You speak, you engage, you are present. But what you say is curated. You share enough to appear open while protecting the intelligence that actually matters. Your real timeline, your real goals, your real assessment of where you are and where you are going. There is a concept in intelligence strategy called need to know. Information is only shared with those who need it to perform their function. Everyone else operates on a version of reality that is complete enough to be credible, but never comprehensive enough to be dangerous. Apply this to your personal life and your professional ambitions. Your coworkers need to know you are competent and collaborative. They do not need to know you are planning to launch your own operation in 18 months. Your social circle needs to know you are engaged and present. They do not need to know you have restructured your daily life entirely around building towards something they cannot yet see. Your rivals need to see a peer. They do not need to see a threat rising until it is already too late to respond effectively. This is the Machiavellian approach to silence. It is not absence of communication. It is precision of communication. You speak deliberately, and what you do not say carries as much strategic weight as what you do. Section 4. The power of being underestimated. Here is where Machiavellian thinking becomes genuinely counterintuitive for most people. Most people are taught that being underestimated is humiliating, that if people do not recognize your potential, you should correct that perception, that allowing others to see you as smaller than you are damages your reputation. Machiavelli saw it entirely differently. Being underestimated is one of the most powerful strategic positions available to you. When people underestimate you, they stop watching you. They stop tracking your movements. They stop preparing counter strategies against your rise. They become careless. And carelessness in rivals is a gift. Cesare Borgia, whom Machiavelli admired as a near-perfect example of political strategy, understood this completely. Before each significant move, Borgia operated with such careful concealment that his targets only recognized the threat when it was already too late. By the time the consequences were understood, there was nothing left to do. This is not unique to Renaissance Italy. Study any major corporate disruption in the modern era. Before Amazon revealed its ambitions in logistics, then cloud computing, then healthcare, they allowed themselves to be seen as a bookstore. A convenient, useful bookstore. Nothing threatening, nothing that required immediate defensive response from the giants they were quietly positioning themselves to displace. Before Tesla revealed its full ambitions, it allowed itself to be seen as a niche car company for wealthy environmentalists. Nothing that required the full attention of Ford or General Motors, until it was too late for that attention to matter. The pattern repeats itself throughout history. The most effective risers do not announce their climb. They climb, and they allow others to discover how high they have gotten only after the altitude is secure. Your goal is not to manage how people perceive your ambition. Your goal is to achieve your ambition, and being underestimated gives you the operational space to do exactly that. Section 5, the danger of premature announcement. There is also a psychological dimension to this that is worth examining carefully, and it operates entirely within yourself, independent of what others do to you. When you announce an ambition, something happens inside your mind that is almost paradoxical. You get the social reward before doing the work. The announcement itself, the nodding heads, the congratulations, the expressions of support and excitement, gives your brain a small version of the satisfaction that should only come after the achievement. And because you have already received some of the reward, your internal drive to pursue the goal diminishes slightly, sometimes significantly. This is not speculation. This is supported by research in behavioral psychology. Psychologist Peter Gollwitzer has studied this phenomenon extensively. The act of telling people about your identity-related goals creates what he calls a social reality. The feeling that you have already become the person you intended to become. And that feeling reduces the urgency to actually do the work. Machiavelli did not have access to behavioral psychology, but he observed the outcome in the real world consistently enough to draw the same conclusion. A prince who announces his conquests before achieving them will find that his will weakens and his enemies strengthen simultaneously, both for reasons he controls and reasons he does not. So the concealment of ambition is not just a defensive strategy against external threats. It is a discipline that protects your own internal drive. You keep the hunger alive by keeping the goal private. You preserve the urgency by refusing to let social recognition substitute for actual achievement. Announce after the fact, not before. Section 6. The Mask of Modesty. Now let us talk about something that makes many people uncomfortable: the deliberate performance of modesty. Machiavelli is blunt on this point. A ruler must know how to use both the nature of man and the nature of beast. Specifically, he recommends the qualities of the fox: cunning, adaptive, observant, alongside the strength of the lion. And the fox does not reveal its intelligence. It moves quietly. It appears smaller and less threatening than it is. The practical translation for modern life is this: when you are building something significant, it serves you to present a version of yourself that is humble, agreeable, still learning. Not as a lie exactly, but as a strategic emphasis. You genuinely are still learning. You genuinely do face uncertainty. Lead with that. What you do not lead with is the full scope of your vision, the confidence you have in your direction, the systematic way you are executing, the timeline you have laid out, the resources you have already assembled. This is not dishonesty in any morally significant sense. It is the understanding that full transparency in a competitive world is not a virtue. It is a vulnerability, and intelligent people do not unnecessarily expose their vulnerabilities. The mask of modesty also serves another function that is less obvious. It keeps you connected to reality. A person who is constantly performing confidence and announcing their greatness tends to lose the calibration between self-perception and actual position. The person who maintains internal ambition while externally projecting modesty stays grounded. They know the gap between where they are and where they are going. They do not confuse the announcement of the vision with the attainment of it. Section 7. Who to trust and how much. At this point, a question naturally arises. Do you tell anyone? Or is total concealment the standard? Machiavelli was not an absolutist. He understood that counsel is necessary, that a prince who refuses all advice eventually operates in a dangerously limited information environment. The question was never whether to confide. The question was in whom, in what, and to what degree. His framework for counsel is instructive. He says a wise prince selects advisors who speak truthfully even when the truth is uncomfortable, who have no interest in flattery, and who understand that their role is to inform rather than to please. And critically, these advisors are explicitly authorized to speak. They know their function. Outside of this authorized circle, no intelligence about real strategy flows. Apply this to your own life. There are people who have earned the right to know your real ambitions, not because they are close to you emotionally, but because they have demonstrated that their interests are genuinely aligned with yours. Their discretion is proven, and their counsel is actually useful. For most people, that is a very small circle, 2 or 3 people at most, often just one. Everyone else gets the curated version, the friendly surface, the partial picture that is accurate enough to be credible and incomplete enough to be safe. And even within your inner circle, Machiavelli would caution, you do not reveal the timeline for things still in motion. You share vision, you share values, you share honest assessments of obstacles, but granular operational detail stays protected until it no longer matters to protect it. The question to ask about every person in your life is not, do they care about me? The question is, do their interests functionally align with my rise? Because caring about you and being aligned with your success are not the same thing. They can coexist. they can also be completely separate. Section 8. Reading the people around you. This brings us to one of the most practically useful aspects of the Machiavellian framework, learning to read the people around you accurately. Most people are not deliberately malicious. They are not calculating enemies plotting your failure, but their self-interest shapes their behavior in ways they themselves may not fully recognize. And your job, if you are serious about your ambitions, is to read that self-interest clearly. There are several types you will encounter regularly. The first is the competitive peer, someone at roughly your level who has roughly similar ambitions. This person is not your enemy, but they are not your ally either. They are a rival in the oldest sense of the word, someone running the same race. Sharing your strategy with this person is exactly as wise as a sprinter announcing to the runner beside them that they plan to accelerate at the 300-meter mark. The second is the threatened superior, someone above you who has achieved what you are pursuing and recognizes in you a future challenger. This person may like you personally, they may even mentor you genuinely, but there is a layer of their psychology that is vigilant for signs that you are moving to unseat them. Do not feed that vigilance. The third is the unconscious saboteur, a friend or family member who loves you genuinely, but whose sense of their own identity is tied to you remaining as you are. When you change, you implicitly challenge the story they tell about their own life. Their resistance to your growth is not malicious. It is self-protective, but it is still resistance, and announcing your ambitions gives it a target to aim at. The fourth is the genuine ally, rare, usually found through shared experience rather than shared background. This person's well-being is genuinely linked to yours. Their incentives run parallel. You can be more open with them, but even here, operational detail stays guarded until positions are secured. Section 9. Executing in silence. Let us bring this to practical execution. What does it actually look like to apply these principles in real life? It looks like this. You make your decisions before announcing them. Not as a way of avoiding input, but as a way of ensuring that your direction is set by your own judgment rather than by the social pressure that comes the moment you open the question to others. You allow your results to speak first. The announcement of achievement carries a different energy than the announcement of intention. One is certain, the other is vulnerable. Wherever possible, you let people discover what you have done rather than announcing what you plan to do. You practice what can be called strategic vagueness. When asked directly about your plans, you respond with answers that are true but incomplete. I am working on some things. I am figuring out the next step. I have some ideas I am still developing. All true. None of it useful to anyone who would use the information against you. You protect your timeline specifically. Of all the details about an ambitious project, the timeline is the most dangerous to share. Once people know when you plan to move, they can prepare responses in advance. Keep the timeline internal. Share it with no one unless their cooperation is genuinely required. You let people believe what is convenient for them to believe. If someone assumes you are less ambitious than you are, or that your project is smaller than it is, or that your timeline is longer than it is, do not correct them. Their misunderstanding is working in your favor. And you do all of this without becoming cold, suspicious, or socially withdrawn. The Machiavellian approach is not antisocial. It is performed within perfectly warm, engaging social interactions. You are present. You are likable. You are generous with your attention and your energy. You simply keep certain rooms locked. Section 10. The moment to reveal. Because Machiavelli was a strategist, not a nihilist, he also addressed when to reveal. Concealment is not permanent. It is tactical. The goal is to reveal from a position of strength rather than from a position of vulnerability. The right moment to be open about your ambitions is when the position is already secured, when the deal is signed, when the promotion is confirmed, when the business is operational, when the outcome is already determined and the information can no longer be used to block you. At that point, transparency serves you. It builds your reputation as someone who executes rather than someone who merely talks. It demonstrates that your ambitions were real, not performative. And it positions your next move, which you are already concealing. There is also a category of strategic revelation that Machiavelli would approve of. revealing ambition as a tool of deterrence to specific people who need to understand that confronting you carries cost. This is different from broadcasting your plans. It is targeted. It is calculated. It says to a specific rival, "I am coming, and your best option is to step aside rather than resist." But this kind of revelation is rare and deliberate. It is not the default. The default is silence. Revelation is the exception, deployed when it serves a specific strategic purpose. Section 11. The philosophical core. Before we close, I want to address something that some of you may be wrestling with. Is this ethical? It is a fair question, and it deserves a serious answer. Machiavelli was not writing a book about how to be a good person in the conventional moral sense. He was writing a book about how power actually operates versus how we wish it operated. His realism has disturbed people for 500 years precisely because it refuses the comfortable fiction that the world operates according to the rules we are taught in childhood. The ethics of concealing your ambitions is not about deception in any meaningful sense. You are not lying to people. You are not manipulating them against their interests. You are simply choosing not to volunteer information that would be used against you. We all do this instinctively in some domains. You do not tell someone you are negotiating against what your maximum budget is. You do not tell a job interviewer every weakness you have. You do not reveal your complete hand in any high-stakes situation. Concealing ambition is an extension of the same natural wisdom. It is the recognition that living in the world as it is, rather than as we wish it were, requires a degree of strategic privacy. The truly unethical thing, by Machiavellian logic, is not concealment. It is naivety. It is the failure to protect your capacity to achieve what you are capable of achieving because you mistook social virtue signaling for genuine safety. Your ambitions are yours. They represent the direction of your life, the use of your time, the legacy you intend to build. Protecting them is not selfish. It is the basic responsibility you have to yourself and to the people your success will eventually serve. Closing. Machiavelli ends The Prince with one of the most passionate passages he ever wrote, a call for someone to rise, someone with the virtue, and he means not moral virtue but excellence, capability, strategic power, to accomplish what most people only talk about. He believed that an individual with enough intelligence, enough discipline, enough strategic clarity could reshape the conditions they were born into, could build something that outlasted them, could move from where they were to somewhere that most people around them could not even imagine. But not by being naive, not by broadcasting intentions to those who would block them, not by confusing openness with strength, by moving quietly, building steadily, revealing only what serves the mission, and arriving at the destination before anyone realized the journey had begun. That is the Machiavellian principle of ambition. Not the suppression of your goals, the protection of them, not distrust of everyone, the accurate reading of who people actually are, not isolation, the strategic management of information in a world that does not always want you to succeed. Keep your ambitions close, build in silence, announce with results. Machiavelli would approve.